Welcome back to the Naked Proverbs podcast, where we unclothe the truth about Black love, family, and marriage. My name is Nik Scott, one of your hosts, and I'm here with my husband.
What's going on? It's your boy Rich, and today we're going to talk about them entanglements.
Ooh, that sounds juicy. Right at the start of every episode, we always remind you that we are not trained, licensed, or professional therapists or counselors. We have been married for 19 years, and Naked Proverbs is our platform to share our stories, our advice, our experience, and our opinions. If you haven't already, make sure you're following the Naked Proverbs on whatever podcasting platform you are listening on. And if you like what you hear, make sure you show us your love and support by stopping by iTunes and leaving us a 5-star review.
Thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you tuning in, and I hope that you're sharing these great episodes with someone. Statistically speaking, 1 out of every 4 men will have an affair.
That's 25%.
25%.
Mm-hmm.
And 15% of married women will have an affair.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not quite the same.
Mm-mm.
But to me, they're both very damaging numbers. And what I mean by that is those numbers are very damaging to marriage, or they can be. It was very interesting, eye-opening as I started to do some research, because, I like to look at numbers and see what the numbers say, right? And another number that was even, I think, more shocking to me was that it said that in America, extramarital affairs, 20 to 40% of heterosexual married men and 20 to 25% of heterosexual married women will have an extramarital affair during their lifetime.
Does that classify what an extramarital affair is? Because I think when we say affair, most people automatically assume sexual affair, like intercourse.
Right. And it didn't break it down, but I think that that's a great point that you bring up. When people think of entanglements, affairs, I think everybody immediately thinks sexual intercourse. But the truth is, you can have an affair emotionally with someone.
Mm-hmm. We've kind of talked about this a little bit on an earlier episode about the emotional attachments that one spouse or another can have with someone outside of their marriage. And we also discussed how that is a little bit more challenging to identify.
I think that when we were talking about it, it wasn't so much in an affair status. It was more of friendships of the opposite sex.
Right.
And the challenges that can arise.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that emotional affair is pretty clear, kind of like a sexual affair. Because if you are sharing and giving and spending time with someone that's not your spouse in a way that you're not doing that with your spouse, and you are hiding it, because I would say that something's not right. You know that you are sharing more of yourself with someone else than you are with your spouse emotionally, that it should be pretty clear. It shouldn't be this gray area. And I think that that's the thing. It's so easy to say, well, that was a sexual affair, so that's very clear to see. But it's like, well, I'm not really sure. Was that an affair? Yes, if, like I said, if you are hiding stuff, hiding text messages, and telling your spouse you're going to Walmart and you actually with this other person, even if it's just, well, we just had lunch together. Well, how come you couldn't share that with your spouse? If you are hiding it, then there's more to it.
That is a great point. It is the intention behind the action. And I don't know if I totally can get on board with, when you're having an emotional affair, because I don't who is the one that calls it an emotional affair? Is it the person who is engaged in the action, or is it the spouse who is left out of the action, so to speak? Who is that determiner, or is it the other party who's involved?
I mean, if you're lying, if you're hiding, if you're sneaking, if you're not totally transparent and honest, then you shouldn't even have to ask that question. You should, like, if you feel like you have to hide, like your husband or wife doesn't even know about this other person. So it's not like, because I think a lot of times emotional affairs can be found more in women. And the reason I say that is because there's that emotional connection and need that women have. Not saying that men don't have that, but if you find yourself with your coworker and y'all working late every night and it's just, it's kosher, it's good, right? But the next thing you know, now you're having dinners at his house, but you're telling your husband you're still working late at work and nothing's happening physically, but you're just sharing about your day, or you're talking about the kids, or you're talking about the stressors you have in your life. And those are things that you should be doing with your spouse and you're not. Then to me, it's pretty clear.
So then I guess my question is still like, who is calling it an affair? Because obviously the person, if
the person being hurt,
if you're okay.
I would say that if I found out those things were happening in your life, and because it's just like an affair, it comes to light some kind of way, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody reached, Rich, man, I saw your wife at Long John Silver's with this guy.
Long John, first of all, if he's taking me to Long John Silver's, I don't care if he's a friend or not. That right there is the first problem.
Okay, well, they see you somewhere, wherever, or me, vice versa, right? Mm-hmm. And it comes to one of our attention, and what I told you was I was going camping. Mm-hmm. Or you told me that you were working late, and somebody's like, well, I saw your wife at, Shanahan's mm-hmm. having dinner. Mm-hmm. And it, I'm not trying to put no, salt in your life, but, and I think that at that point, then it's just like a normal affair. It's come to light. Right. There was some lying, there was some misdeeds, and then how it happens after that, I think, is going to decide more so.
Exactly.
Like when you come to me and ask me, or I come to you and ask you, mm-hmm. and you just keep going down this rabbit hole of lying mm-hmm. instead of coming mm-hmm. out with the truth.
Yeah.
Then I would say that's an emotional affair.
Yep. You're definitely emotionally attached. I just want to be very clear with our listeners, because that is a very slippery slope. Physical affairs is easy. Like, exactly when to say when. Now I can definitely, when you getting hot and heavy and wet and things are happening and things are hard and pushing up against each, when to say when, and when things are about to happen. I don't care what adrenaline is going on. I don't care how drunk you are, how high you are, when you're about to enter and engage in a physical affair. In an entanglement. Emotionally, it's not that easy. It's because I would argue that most emotional affairs start off as innocent meetings of the minds.
And I think, to me, that's why I think emotional affairs are so much more dangerous and can be more damaging, because they've had time to build. They've had, you've began to possibly start to have feelings for someone else, and you don't even realize that you're having these feelings until because I think an emotional affair can definitely lead to a physical affair.
Absolutely.
And so to me, it's like, you could be walking along, and this is just your good friend that you've known since forever.
Mm-hmm. Since middle school.
Right. And y'all are just sitting on the couch talking and laughing and just being friends like you've always been, even though now one of you is married.
Or both.
And your spouses are understanding that, that you have a friend of an opposite sex and y'all been friends since forever. Mm-hmm. And it might be one of those moments where you're like, my spouse is just doesn't seem like they're into me. They're always preoccupied. And because to me, that's part of what creates that affair, is they are offering you something that you feel you're not getting.
Would you say that? I don't know why people cheat.
I don't know. I'm not a professional counselor or therapist.
Well, we said that at the beginning, but I honestly don't know. I'm talking specifically about physical affairs. I do understand and can see how an emotional affair can take place. I don't necessarily feel that it's more dangerous than a physical affair, because they are both betrayals. A betrayal is a betrayal is a betrayal is a betrayal. And the process of grieving what you thought was your marriage is going to be the same, in my opinion, as if it was an emotional affair or a physical affair. But like I said, I don't know why people cheat in the first place. I have heard that people say that they cheat because there was something missing, or there was just a small area of opportunity for this other person to fill a void or a gap, or this person made them feel a certain way that I personally don't understand entanglements.
I mean, I don't think that like there's a excuse for
or a reason, or what's the reason though?
I think that people have a lot of reasons, and like I said, that's why it's not something you can put a pin in and say this is the reason.
Yeah,
there are probably hundreds or thousands of reasons that therapists have heard people come and give them for why they started an emotional or physical affair.
Right.
And maybe statistically they've narrowed it down to the top 20 things. I don't know. But what I am saying is I think that just because you're like, well, I don't think there's a reason, or I don't have any reason in my mind. Well,
I just don't understand.
They've happened, and they've continued to happen through centuries of marriage. Like, this isn't something new. This isn't something, that just happened. I mean, Adam and Eve probably was messing around. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, the person that did it, there was a reason that they did it. And I think that that's part of the healing process, is you have to have conversations around that, no matter how hard that conversation may be, no matter how much that conversation you don't want to have it or it might hurt to hear. Because I think that, like I said in the beginning, this isn't about, well, they had a right to have an affair because you weren't having sex with them, or you weren't asking them about their day, so they had a right to go create. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is they have a reason in their mind, in their head, for why they did what they did.
I think it's the opportunity was there. Again, speaking specifically about physical affairs. The opportunity was there. It happened. And when there are discussions about the affair, I would say that the person who is engaged in the entanglement, they would always say it's something that the other person wasn't doing, or wasn't giving, or wasn't saying, or wasn't making them feel. So in my opinion, in a situation like that, it's like, well, you did something or you didn't do something, and this led me to go have an affair, whether it's emotional or physical. It's because of the lack in this area, because of you, is why I did that. And I just can't get on board with that, because I feel like as grown people who are married, who full well know what they're doing in a given moment, especially when it becomes a sexual situation, you have the power in any moment to say no, to stop, to leave, to change the narrative. So for people to slip and to fall into these situations. But I don't think that's what
people are saying, though, and that's not what I'm saying. I think you're taking it from the mindset of you had an affair and you're like, oops. There's some people that have affairs and are like, shit, I had an affair. Yeah. Yes, and I had an affair because you know what? You work till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock every night. We don't have a marriage. We don't have a relationship. You're never around. I've brought up my concerns to you. You don't hear what I'm saying. And you know what? I bumped into somebody randomly, and then it led into us having an affair. But it's not like you just wake up one day and be like, I'm going to have an affair today. And I think that's what I'm saying. Like, and again, I'm not justifying it, but what I'm saying is I would say that any marriage where there has been an affair, there was something bigger in that marriage that needed to be addressed that wasn't addressed.
I mean, I don't know. I think the bigger discussion, why you have an affair, why you cheat, whatever, I don't get it. We'll never agree on this one. But what happens after the affair? Does it have to be the end of your marriage? What is the deal breaker, right? Like, well, if he or she cheats, then I'm done. Is that the way it should be in a marriage?
Well, I think even before that, though, when we talked about the statistics earlier, every marriage doesn't have an affair. So how do you even avoid it to begin with, right? What are some things that you can try to do in your marriage? And I don't think there's a foolproof way, again, because, there are so many random reasons that people say they stepped out.
Just be like me. You'll never have an affair.
What's that?
Very well aware of what you're doing, where you are, who you talking to. Set some standards and some boundaries and some thresholds around your relationships, and respect your marriage and your spouse enough to know that if I do this, sliding into somebody's DMs, meeting people when I'm supposed to be other places, and when I know that these things would hurt me, why would I hurt that person in that way? Like, treat your spouse the way that you would want to be treated. Like, get on your high horse, raise your moral compass, and be real with yourself. Like, that's how you prevent an affair. Like, you're like, you know what? I find this man attractive. He is so fine.
He made me wet.
He makes me wet. Like, every time he come around, I am like, ooh, boy. Then why are you continually being around this man? Unless it's like, even if it is a coworker, you can still set boundaries. You can still have standards, and you can still have parameters around how you engage and interact with that person.
Well, I think that was a great explanation of how do you avoid an affair. I mean, because you just kind of said, well, act like me. But I think that you gave some great examples, some great advice. I remember when I was in college, there was this Kappa. And there's always Kappas in my life. But anyway, there was this Kappa. And he said something to me that I was kind of like, what? And I'm going to be honest, it took me some years to truly, fully understand what he said and what he meant. But he basically said such a simple phrase: if you don't put yourself in a situation, you don't have to worry about how you're going to react in the situation.
Period.
And like I said, it took me some years to grow into and fully understand that, because I think it's one of those comments kind of like, well, you should love your wife like Jesus loved the church, right? It's an easy comment, but until you fully understand and pull it apart and really dig deep to uncover what that truly means, you can never truly do what that simple phrase says. So for me, it's as simple as, if a group of single friends want to go out and go to the strip club and go drinking, that doesn't mean that I have to avoid doing those things. But it also means that I have to remember that I am married. So there is a line that shouldn't be crossed, no matter who I'm with, no matter what we're doing. Because if your friends, single or married, don't respect your marriage, then they probably shouldn't be your friends.
Their marriages.
Right. Exactly. But I'm saying, if you see it, because I was assuming these are people that aren't married. I said single friends.
Oh, okay.
So if you have single friends that you still, hang out with, and they don't respect your marriage, then those probably are people you don't want to hang out with. And like you said, vice versa, if you have married friends that don't respect their own marriage, then you definitely need to steer clear, because you will find yourself in those situations that I just described, where I said, what did I say? If you don't put yourself in that situation, you don't have to worry about how you'll react.
You don't got to worry about it.
But if you are hanging out with people that don't respect your marriage, then you will find yourself in situations where you're like, oh, wait, now what do I do? You didn't have to be there to begin with.
Because most people don't have enough guts. I'm just going to be honest. Most people don't have enough guts to walk away from a situation. They don't. Most people, that's why peer pressure is so real, right? From the time we're freaking elementary age children, we succumb to peer pressure because we don't have enough courage to walk away from situations that we know are wrong, and especially when it involves ourselves. So play out the scenario. You have two people that are physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, whatever, attracted to each other in a room. They're together. They start feeling, touching, kissing, licking, whatever's going on. One of those or both of those people are married. When it gets to a point with the people who have affairs, not the ones that are intentionally carrying out relationships with other people, because those are two different things, right? If you are in a situation and you find yourself and you're like, I would never have an affair, and then you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened. This could never happen again. Like, your ass should have got your naked, butt up, out the bed, out the couch, off the floor, wherever the hell, out the car, wherever the hell you are. We got Uber and everything else, and left. Like, that is how serious it is to me. For me, it is cut and dry. Keep your damn legs closed unless it's for your husband. And men, don't you be sliding that hard ass D up in nobody unless it's your wife. Like, it's that simple to me. Like, it is so clear to me. So even if you somehow find yourself in a situation, have the guts and the courage to leave.
All right, so you gave some great advice on how to avoid them. What's your advice on how to work through them?
How to work through them? First of all, well, y'all can see that I'm very passionate about this, right? Because I am passionate about marriage, and I really feel like an affair is the ultimate betrayal in a marriage. More than money situations, I feel like affairs can really damage a marriage, not just in the sense of trust, but in the connection that you have with your spouse. So the first step for me is for the person who is engaged in the affair to admit it and to be honest and real with themselves first. Because if you can't be honest and real with yourself, you cannot be honest and real with your spouse. Like, if you get caught in an affair, your first reaction shouldn't be like, nuh-uh.
It wasn't me.
Right?
What was that rapper that used to always sing that song?
Yeah, like, that should not be your first reaction. You should be like, damn, you right. And if you're sorry, be truly sorry. Don't put this person on your timeline like, well, it's been 2 years since this happened and you still mad. Yes, I am still mad. Like, if you want this to work out, then you have to allow that person to grieve and to heal in their own time. Like, you have no idea the damage that you could do to a person by having an affair on them, by cheating on them.
So come clean is definitely, I think, a top on the list. And then I think you have to be honest. Like, as you are moving towards forgiveness and towards, a happier marriage or a better place, you have to be honest. And there may be some questions that are asked of you that you aren't comfortable answering. There may be some requests that are made of you that you aren't comfortable with.
That's good. Can you give an example? Like, if somebody, what?
I didn't have no example. So
well, I really like that. Like, I felt that when you said that, I really felt that. So let's say I get caught cheating, right? And you're like, you know what? Don't you lock your phone? Matter of fact, you can't even have a phone. I want all the passwords to your social media. You need to turn on your location. Like, those are things you're saying.
Those requests, right, that could be asked of your spouse that has been cheated on, that I think that if you really want to have healing and really want to move forward in your marriage, then you need to be open to that. And I think it goes back to what you said earlier, because I think a lot of people will say, well, it's been 2 years, it's been 6 months, it's been 5 years, whatever. You need to get over it and let's move forward. But no one can really say how someone should react to something like that. So to me, because it's easy to play the part of, I'm sorry. That's for good. 3 months.
That is good.
For 2 months, for 6 months.
Yep.
Maybe even up to a year. I would say it's easy to play that part, right? But if you aren't really serious about changing your behavior and aren't really serious about making your marriage work, then you're not going to last the storm of what you've created. You're not going to last the storm. You've created this storm that you won't be able to last through, because the truth is you really don't want to. But if you have done damage in your marriage and you really want to see your marriage flourish again, then you are going to do whatever it takes. Whether that's 1 year, 20 years, you are going to do what it takes to make your marriage great again.
So it does not have to be the end of your marriage.
No.
And if you're sorry, be sorry. Don't be a serial cheater.
Right.
I don't agree that once a cheater, always a cheater. I think that there are like categories of people. I think there are men and or women who can be categorized as cheaters. Like they asses is just cheaters, period. But I also think that there are men and women who make mistakes. And I think that the couple has to determine, I've spent a lot of time talking about the cheater and not the person who's been cheated on, but the person who's been cheated on has to assess and really, I guess, dig deep within themselves and understand and see their spouse's heart. And are they a cheater or are they a person who cheated? Because those are two different things. And I would also say for the person who's been cheated on, you do have some culpability in it. Now, I say that with a pause because...
Yeah, because I don't match what you said earlier.
No, how does that not match? I said, I don't understand how people could cheat.
Okay.
But what else did I say?
I thought you said something different, but I guess I was wrong.
I mean, maybe I
don't know.
We'll have to run the replay. I may have said something around, it's not the other person's fault. Like, it's not my fault that you cheat. But I do feel like there is some responsibility in keeping your spouse and your house, I guess, happy. And what does that happiness look like? Because if the person is saying, well, it's your fault, and you're like, how is it my fault? Because 9 times out of 10, I will say that a spouse can come up with a rebuttal for every single situation that you say is your fault. But if your spouse cheated and it wasn't an accidental cheating, like it's a full-blown affair, there has to be some discussion and there has to be some responsibility taken on both sides.
And I think, along with that, kind of going back to one of the things you said, is that you should both seek counseling, individual as well as, couples counseling, because you might discover there are some things. And I say, I don't know if I said this, but I'm going to professional counseling.
Not your pastor.
I'm not talking about your pastor who ain't ever had no type
Didn't even
of
go to
training.
College.
I'm not talking about the first lady
who
went through it because her husband cheated on her.
No.
I'm not talking about your mama who you didn't know, but your daddy cheated on her. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking a professional licensed marriage and family therapist, a counselor. And in our community, we can really act like we're afraid to open those doors because we think Pandora's box might be back there. But do not be afraid to go get counseling if you really want to see your marriage work.
But if you're open enough to go talk to your pastor who doesn't even have a college degree, let alone a license in counseling, if you're open enough to go talk to them, why wouldn't you be open enough to go talk to a therapist?
Well, one thing I've heard, because I have, counseled couples before, I do have a degree in psychology. So you have a college education.
So
I do have a college education, and it does have, a little bit to do with understanding the human, how
behavior.
humans behave. But I'm not licensed. So I would say that what I have found is that a lot of times couples, especially when there's been an affair, one of the couples wants someone that's going to agree with them, and the other couple wants someone that's going to agree with them. Like, they want to get counsel from someone that's going to see, you know what, Rich, you're right, man. Your wife,
she sucks.
She wasn't a good wife. You should have been out there messing around.
Yeah.
Well, Nik, let's focus on you instead of focusing on Rich, or vice versa. And I've seen that so often that it prevents them from being able to move forward, because they literally are in a place where they're really not seeking help. They're seeking validation for their choices. Because like you just said, there may be something that I did that caused you to step out.
Even if it's small.
Right. Even if it's small. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But if I am not there for you emotionally, and I haven't been there for you emotionally, like maybe I was in the beginning, and you need that. You are someone that needs that emotional connection, and you find yourself having an emotional affair, then I'm like, well, I want to find a counselor that's just going to eat you a new one because you wrong.
You shouldn't have did it.
Instead of me saying, well, let's find a counselor that's going to help both of us identify and fix the things that cause this, as well as help us understand how to work through it, how to heal from the pain that's been caused.
Well, let's be clear. Somebody's wrong and somebody's right in a situation of an affair, period. And usually it's the person who is doing the cheating. They're the wrong party. I said usually, because sometimes, like I said before, the other spouse does have some culpability in it. Because if you're saying, well, we didn't have enough sex, and you're like, well, we have sex twice a day, 7 days a week. Like, how much more sex do you need?
I don't know. That sounds good, though.
Or if you're like, well, we used to sit on the couch and watch movies, and now we don't watch. What are you talking about? We just watched a movie last night. You know what I'm saying? So, in my opinion, it's the therapist, the professional therapist, the licensed therapist's job to help you unpack that. Like, they have been trained in this area.
Right.
And make sure you do some research on your therapist, people, because if your therapist has a marriage that's all over the place, then you don't need to be seeking counseling from them either.
Like, there's no reason for you to be at Steve Harvey asking him about marriage when he's on his 5th marriage. There's no reason for you to be reading Steve Harvey's book about how to have a great marriage when he's on his 15th wife. Like, I'm just being real, because I think, unfortunately, there's so many people out there that are celebrities or, you know, in the media or in your social media, that people jump on these bandwagons of, ooh, they figured it out. Ooh, they are.
Steve Harvey ain't figured nothing out except how to be Steve Harvey.
Like, and I think that that's unfortunate that we don't play. Like, I look at it like this. Would you go to someone that's bankrupt and ask them how to build wealth?
Well,
no.
What if they've accumulated and amassed wealth?
No, that's not what I just said. We're not talking about no what ifs. Why would you go to someone that hasn't accomplished what you want? My line brother said that one time. He was talking about all these people that wanted to help him invest and build. And he said, man, I got people that don't have $50,000 in their bank account trying to tell me how to manage my $1 million. Like, how does that even work? Like, how you going to tell me how to manage $1 million when you can't manage 25? How are you going to tell me how to be a better husband when you on your 10th marriage and you're unhappy? Maybe you're on the verge of being on your 11th.
Maybe it took 10 times to get it right.
But I'm not saying that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying the person that's on their 10th marriage and they getting it right. I'm saying you getting advice from the person that's on their 10th marriage about to be on their 11th.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Like, there's a big difference between those two examples.
And let's be clear, Steve Harvey does not have a license in marriage and family therapy. So,
and then, you know, back on our list of how do you work through it? You have to be transparent as the person that was the doer. And what I mean by that is kind of some of the things you talked about. You know, hey, phone check. I want to see your phone. Give it up. Like, I just look at it like this. If you want to be married after having an affair, you can, because there are plenty of successful marriages out there where there was infidelity in the marriage at some point. Mm-hmm. But it requires work. It doesn't just happen.
And getting uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because your marriage will not grow if you stay comfortable. If you feel some level of discomfort, then you probably should just go on and lean into it and get comfortable being uncomfortable.
I mean, because you have to rebuild that trust that has been broken. And it's going to take longer than it did when y'all was dating and you was just trying to get her to like you, or vice versa. Like, it's going to take some real work to rebuild the trust in your marriage.
This topic is so big.
It is.
Like, it is such a big topic. Even in this one episode, we talked about emotional affairs. We talked about the accidental affairs. We talked about the serial cheaters. We talked about the ones who out there got whole separate families.
Dang, yeah, them people exist. That's like real. I thought that was the movies, but that's real.
They exist in most people's families. Mm-hmm. Like, some people are products of that, mm-hmm. right? And this topic is just so big and it's so heavy. We need more than a half an hour to unpack everything that has to do with entanglements.
And I mean, maybe we can have, you know, episode 2 next week, because I don't like doing like weeks in between and then 6 months later we come back and talk about this subject again, because we haven't even, as many jokes as I've made about the word entanglement, we haven't even addressed that, right? There are people that choose to have open marriages that create these types of things. And I think that, we can discuss this more in
we need to talk
next
about
week's
that.
episode.
We definitely need to talk about that. In the past, people would have said that's not something that happens in the Black community. Right. Open marriages and swingers. In this day and age, it is plaguing our Black communities, and it's playing out in ways that is so, look, I agree with you. We need to definitely have part two.
Part 2.
That sounds so boring. We'll have to come up with something a little more creative than part 2.
Entanglement number 2. We'll call this one Will and call the other one Jada. Does that work?
Okay.
So this is the Will episode.
This is Will because I'm pissed.
Yeah. And then we're going to talk about Jada next week.
We're going to talk about Jada, so y'all stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Naked Proverbs podcast. We truly want you to have a happy marriage. We want you to thrive in your marriages and indulge in your spouse, not nobody else's spouse, your spouse on a regular basis. Don't forget to follow the Naked Proverbs on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts on, and we will talk to y'all in the next one.
Peace.